and welcome to Rogues Reads, Salem Public Library's virtual book club for kids in 4th to 8th grade. I am Renee. I'm the children's librarian at Salem Public Library in Salem, Ohio. I do not have Rogue with me today. I am actually at the library, which is really exciting. We're not open to the public yet, but some of us are back in the building, so we're getting closer. And we actually are doing some curbside delivery, so if you need books, you can find our announcement on our Facebook page to find out how you can go about getting books from us right now. And it's kind of weird recording in my office. I've gotten so used to recording in my living room. It's very nice to be back at the library, though. So we are reading The Genius Files, You Only Died Twice by Dan Gutman. This is book 3 in the series, and it is available on Hoopla if you would like to read along, which I highly recommend. And where we left off on Friday, I'm just kind of starting book 3. And Dr. Warsaw married Aunt Judy, which is really scary. And so they, and he did threaten the twins, so apparently we are not done with them. Which I guess not, since there's a couple more books in the series. So here we go. We are on chapter 5, A Message in the Sky. Oh, shall I leave my book right there. At this point, you're probably wondering when Coke McDonald is going to be thrown into a giant shredder. In fact, you may be angry that he hasn't been thrown into a giant shredder yet. Patience, dear reader. Our story is just beginning. Good things come to those who wait. A promise is a promise, and my promise to you is that before the story is over, Coke will most certainly be thrown into a giant shredder. The McDonald family walked north from the Lincoln Memorial, stopping to pay their respects at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Then they crossed Constitution Avenue and wandered around the side streets for a few minutes until they found a little Italian restaurant for dinner. Pep was still a bit nervous and on edge about everything that had happened to her up to this point. But oddly enough, Coke, who remembered everything, had a way of putting the bad experiences out of his mind and looking toward the future. He was starting to relax. And why shouldn't he? Dr. Warsaw was away on his honeymoon with Aunt Judy. He couldn't do anything to harm anybody. Even if that lunatic wanted to, he was severely injured and in a wheelchair. It would be a long time before he'd be able to walk, much less hurt innocent children. By the time Dr. Warsaw's broken bones healed, Coke figured they'd be back home in California and could deal with him then. In the meantime, they might as well enjoy themselves while they could. That was Coke's attitude. Are you kids excited about the fireworks tonight? Dr. McDonald asked as he bit into his second slice of pizza. You know it, Coke shouted, giving his dad a high five. He had nearly forgotten that it was the 4th of July and that there was a big fireworks display on the National Mall. It's the fact that making stuff is interesting. Taking stuff apart is also interesting. But destroying stuff and blowing stuff up is cool. It doesn't matter what it is. Firecrackers, cherry bombs, M80s, bottle rockets, Roman candles, mortar shells. Anything you can light up that will explode with noise, light, smoke, flames, and flying debris is cool. Coke and his dad had a gleam in their eyes just thinking about the fireworks. It's a guy thing. That's sexist, I know. And there are exceptions, of course, but in general, it could be said that girls like fuzzy bunnies, puppies, and kittens, while guys like throwing water balloons at each other and setting ping pong balls on fire. Girls get pleasure from shopping and trying on new clothes. Guys prefer watching cars crash into each other at high speed. I do not agree with this paragraph at all. I could go on, but you get the idea. We're different. Nothing wrong with that. Dr. McDonald paid for dinner, and the family walked back to the National Mall. It was already getting crowded on the grass. Some people had camped out for hours so they would get the best view of the fireworks, next to the reflecting pool between the Lincoln Memorial and the World War II Memorial. Mrs. McDonald found an open spot and spread a blanket on the grass. A few kids were throwing footballs around, so Coke pulled his frisbee out of his backpack and flipped it to his sister. They moved off to the side to have a catch. Fireworks were invented in 17th century China to frighten evil spirits, you know, Coke informed his sister. They would roast bamboo to create a loud bang that would scare away imaginary one-footed monsters. That's really cool. I didn't know that. Do tell more, oh wise one, Pep said, rolling her eyes as she purposefully flung the frisbee over her brother's head to make him go chase it. Ever since they left California, she had been getting better and better. Now Pep could effortlessly whip a frisbee long distances with nearly pinpoint accuracy. She was better than her brother. Not that he would ever admit that. Did you know, Coke told her, that a simple sparkler can get as hot as 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit? You can actually melt gold at that temperature. I was being sarcastic. Pep replied. I didn't really want to hear any more about fireworks. Why not, he replied. They're going to shoot up 33 tons of explosives out here tonight. Can you imagine? 33 tons of potassium, zinc, titanium, sulfur, and phosphorus igniting and exploding before our eyes. How awesome is that going to be? Absolute, awesomely awesome, Pep said with zero enthusiasm. You know, Coke continued, I heard about some guy who was shooting off rockets in his backyard on the 4th of July last year. One of them didn't fire right away, so he looked into the tube to see what was wrong. Oh, that is not a good idea. Then the thing fired and it blew his head off. It blew it clean off. He was still standing there 5 seconds later with no head. Will you shut up already? Pep shouted. She stopped tossing her frisbee. Okay, Coke said. What's your problem? It's just that I have a bad feeling. Uh-oh, feelings. Those things that girls have. Coke couldn't relate. I have a feeling something's going to happen during the fireworks show, Pep admitted. Something bad. Like what? Coke asked. Dr. Warsaw is on his honeymoon. He's not going to bother us here. What about those bowler dudes? Pep asked. They got away in the helicopters. Who knows where they are? And what about Mrs. Higgins? That nutcase is still running around. She could be watching us through binoculars right now for all we know. Coke scanned the perimeter of the mall, looking for snipers on the rooftops. What are any of them going to do? He asked, satisfied that they were safe. Oh, gee, I don't know, Pep said, her voice drenched in sarcasm. Let me think. There will be 33 tons of chemicals exploding in close proximity to thousands of people. What could a crazy person possibly do? Blow up the Lincoln Memorial? Knock down the Washington Monument? Lob a bomb in the middle of all these people? There are plenty of things they could do. I doubt that, Coke began. Don't you see, Pep continued? The 4th of July is the perfect time for a crazy person to attack us, or all these people. The sky will be lit up with explosions. Nobody would know if there was a real bomb going off at the same time. They'd think it was part of the show. I never thought of that, Coke admitted. Pep could see the tide was turning. She was winning the argument. Look, she said, we blew up Archie Cohn's helicopter at the Museum of American History. Wasn't that enough fireworks for you? That was cool, Coke admitted. Okay, I see your point. Maybe we should just get out of here, just to be on the safe side. Let's go talk it over with Mom and Dad. The twins went back to the blanket where their parents were cuddling. Ugh, gross, Coke exclaimed. Will you two knock it off before I get sick? We don't need to see that. What's up, offspring? Said Dr. McDonald as he untangled himself from Mrs. McDonald. We're tired, Pep explained. Maybe we should call it a night. Yeah, we don't want to stick around for the fireworks, Coke said. Let's blow this pop stand. What? Both parents exclaimed. Call it a night? Are you crazy? Dr. McDonald roared. We are in Washington. It's the 4th of July. Of course we're going to watch the fireworks. It's a tradition. It's patriotic. It's American. Can't we just watch them on TV? Pep suggested. Are you kids coming down with something? Mrs. McDonald asked as she reached over to touch their foreheads. You always loved fireworks back home. Oh, excuse me. We've seen them a million times, Coke told his parents. It's always the same. Bang, boom, flash, big finale, the end. We're staying right here, and that's the last. At that moment, there was a huge explosion in the sky above. While the McDonalds had been arguing about whether or not to stick around and watch the fireworks, darkness had fallen on them all. The show had begun. Ooh, moaned the crowd as the first rocket reached its apogee. Oh, I don't know if I said that right. And exploded in fiery tentacles of red, white, and blue. All eyes turned upward. The National Symphony Orchestra struck up a John Philip Sousa march to accompany the visual display as another rocket was launched. It exploded with a boom and lit up the sky with white light. Nobody was going to leave now. Be ready, Coke whispered to his sister. He pulled a baseball cap over his face and scanned the crowd, looking for guys in bowler hats, evil health teachers, wheelchair-bound lunatics, or anything suspicious. The mall was jammed with thousands of people now, and any of them could be up to no good. Ooh, moaned the crowd as 10 rockets went up at once. The resulting flash illuminated the Washington Monument in a multicolored display that was as pretty as his postcard. Hundreds of cell phones were pointed at the sky. You couldn't help but feel like you were Francis Scott Key watching the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air over Fort McHenry during the War of 1812. You kids don't have to sit with us if you don't want to, Mrs. McDonald told the twins. We know what a drag it is at your age to hang out with parents. Yeah, go have a good time, Dr. McDonald said. We don't want to have a good time, Pep replied nervously. We want to be with you. Over the next half hour, the crowd oohed and awed, mesmerized by multicolored pinwheels, twirling circles, bursting stars, smiley faces, hearts, clovers, and American flags lighting up the night. Rockets shot upward and painted the sky with glittery trails of sparks in the shape of waterfalls or weeping willow trees, only to fizzle out and vanish before their embers reached the ground. Little children covered their ears with their hands. The boomers, hummers, crackles, and high-pitched screaming whistles that echoed off the monuments were just too much stimulation for their fragile eardrums. If you closed your eyes, it sounded like a war was going on and you were in the middle of the battlefield. The pyrotechnic display was awe-inspiring. If you weren't thinking about the whole time that you were about to have a bomb drop on your head, Pep went into the fetal position on the ground. She was shaking with fear. When the orchestra kicked into Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture, everyone knew it was time for the finale. The U.S. Army Herald trumpets joined in, as did cannon fire from the United States Army Presidential Salute Battery. With the final crescendo, dozens of rockets shot up and exploded into the night, leaving only these letters hanging in the sky. I don't know if you guys can see it. Level Viz 1. And then all was quiet. Huh? The crowd seemed to ask as one. What's that mean? Somebody asked. They must have spelled something wrong, said Mrs. McDonald. The meaningless letters hung in the air for a few minutes until they gradually faded away in a twinkling of white sparks. The show was over. There was a moment of silence, followed by wild applause and cheering. People started to pick up their lawn chairs, blankets, coolers, and trash. Coke and Pep didn't clap or cheer. They just felt relief. There had been no real bombs. Nobody had died. Did you just see what I just saw? Pep whispered to her brother as they followed the crowd to the exit. That depends on what you just saw, he replied. I just saw some letters that didn't make any sense. Me too, replied Coke, who had already memorized the message in the sky. Do you think it was just a mistake? No, Pep told him. I think it was a cipher. Another cipher. Just can't seem to get away from these. All right, we're going to do one more chapter, but I need to drink water first. All right, Chapter 6, The Battle of Cedar Mountain. A cipher is a secret message, usually one that can be decoded by substituting or changing the order of the letters. Ever since Coke and Pep left California, they had been receiving a new cipher every few days. At first, the ciphers were coming from Dr. Warsaw. After his accident, they were sent by his young madman in training, Archie Clone. But Dr. Warsaw was on his honeymoon, and Archie Clone was dead. Who could be sending the twins' ciphers now? And what could level Viz 1, or Viz I maybe, possibly mean? Pep wasn't very good at remembering vast quantities of information like her brother, but she was excellent at analyzing data, and she made a study of it. She had an uncanny ability to take a series of seemingly random letters, numbers, or symbols and rearrange them to reveal their secret meaning. What does level Viz I mean? Coke whispered impatiently as they followed their parents to the metro station. I don't know yet, Pep replied. Give me a break, will you? I need to work on it. By the time they took the train back to the campground, checked out, and made it through the traffic jam getting out of Washington, it was past midnight. The kids had nearly fallen asleep, but they both woke up when the RV crossed the Arlington Memorial Bridge and a sign appeared at the side of the road. Woohoo! Coke hooted. The Old Dominion State. Oh, I didn't show the sign. Welcome to Virginia! Did you guys know that the Revolutionary War and the Civil War both ended in Virginia? I actually did know that, said Dr. McDonald from the driver's seat. The Revolution ended with the surrender of Cornwallis and Yorktown, and the Civil War ended up at Appomattox. I cannot say that word, I'm sorry. But I'll bet you didn't know that 8 presidents were born in Virginia, Dad, Cook continued. Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Harrison, Tyler, Taylor, and Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Boring, Pep told her brother. And the state beverage of Virginia is milk. Coke added just to annoy her. Nobody cares, doofus. Don't call your brother a doofus, said Mrs. McDonald. With Coke's help, Pep wrote Level Viz I down in her notebook, and she began to work on it, juggling the letters around in her head. This is a hard one. It was very late, and Pep was too tired. Soon the notebook and pen had dropped from her hand. And Coke was just about asleep too when Dr. McDonald pulled the RV onto Route 66 heading west. He drove silently for nearly an hour and a half, passing very close to the battlefield of Bull Run and Manassas. splitting off south on Route 15 and 29. Can you find it on the map? Go ahead. I'll wait. Look it up on your Google map. It was close to 2 o'clock in the morning when the RV turned into the gravel road at Cedar Mountain Campground in Culpeper, Virginia. Coke and Pep didn't wake up. Dr. McDonald parked the RV and checked in at the office. Then he climbed back in and was asleep almost as soon as his head hit the pillow. "Rise and shine," Mrs. McDonald hollered cheerfully the next morning, July 5th. "Come on, kids," Dr. McDonald said, clapping his hands. "We got 3,000 miles to drive before we get back home again." Coke and Pep groaned and stumbled out of the RV, plopping themselves down at a picnic table for breakfast. Mrs. McDonald had prepared instant oatmeal. There was a fishing pond and other amenities at Cedar Mountain Campground, but it didn't look like they would get the chance to use them. Dr. McDonald had spread out a road map of the United States that covered half the table. He leaned over it, stabbing his finger at the state of Virginia. He looked like a general planning out his next battle. "Okay, we took a northern route from California to get to Washington," he reminded the twins. "So we're going to take a southern route going back home. That way we can see a lot more cool stuff." He traced a potential route with his finger down through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and across Texas through the west. "Are we going to visit any more giant balls of twine?" Pep asked wearily. "Of course not," her mother replied. "Been there, done that. I just want to make sure we get to Paris, Texas, where they have a replica of the Eiffel Tower with a giant cowboy hat on top." Sounds kind of interesting. The twins rolled their eyes. Mrs. McDonald owned and operated a popular website called Amazing But True that focused on unusual and often ridiculous tourist destinations across the United States. On the trip east, she had insisted that they stop at museums devoted to yo-yos, mustard, Spam, and Pez dispensers. The family had also had to visit 2 giant balls of twine, one in Cawker City, Kansas, and the other in Darwin, Minnesota. Yes, all of these places actually exist. Go ahead and look them up if you don't believe me. Dr. McDonald carefully folded up his map. "I chose this campground because the Battle of Cedar Mountain took place just a few miles from here," he said. "The first thing we're going to do today is visit the battlefield." "Why this one, Dad?" Coke asked. "There were over 100 Civil War battles fought in Virginia." "Well, you know what they say," Dr. McDonald told him, smiling. "You got to choose your battles." After cleaning up from breakfast and checking out of the campground, they drove a few miles south of Culpeper until they found the site of the Battle of Cedar Mountain. There isn't much there today, just a large field and a few historical markers. During the Civil War, Dr. McDonald told the family, the capitals of the Union and Confederacy were only about 100 miles away from each other, and this is just about the midpoint, so it made sense for them to have a battle here. Coke spotted something at the other end of the field. "Look," he shouted. "Some guys are fighting. Cool." Dr. McDonald parked the RV and the family ran over to find out what was going on. As they got closer, they could see soldiers in blue and gray uniforms running around, shooting, shouting, loading muskets, falling, and sometimes dying. Or so it seemed anyways. "It's a reenactment," Dr. McDonald yelled over the boom of a cannon. "These guys dress up in Union and Confederate uniforms, and they act out the battle just as it happened back in 1862. It was a hot day. Pep felt sorry for the soldiers who had to wear those heavy uniforms and run around carrying big muskets. Coke was entranced. If there's one thing more interesting than watching stuff explode, it's watching people pretending to shoot at each other. I don't get that. The soldiers on both sides would advance and then form a wide line to aim and fire their muskets. It took about a minute for them to reload after each shot and fire again. Some of them fell to the ground. It was exciting and loud. Seems like a dumb way to fight, Coke commented. Remember, they didn't have airplanes and bombs and unmanned drones in those days, Dr. McDonald told him. They fought the way they were told to fight, using the technology that was available at the time. It was hard to tell who was winning. Soldiers on both sides were getting hit and dropping in their tracks. When the battle was over, the dead soldiers got up, brushed themselves off, and got a nice round of applause from the tourists who were milling around. The McDonalds and a few other families gathered around to chat with the reenactors. One of the Confederates explained that he participated in battle reenactments every few weekends to honor the soldiers who fought so hard during the Civil War and to keep their memory alive. Stonewall Jackson led our troops, he said. 9 months later, the Battle of Chancellorsville took place not far from here. One of our guys mistook Stonewall for a Union officer and fired a volley at him. A bullet shattered his arm and it had to be amputated just below the shoulder. And then they buried the arm in its own grave. Wow, Cook said, fascinated. The reenactor told the twins that when Robert E. Lee heard what happened to Stonewall, he said, "He has lost his left arm, but I have lost my right." "That's so sad," said Pep. "Yeah, it was even sadder when Stonewall died 8 days later," said the reenactor. "War ain't pretty, young lady. In fact, it's pretty ugly." The show was over. It was odd to watch the Civil War reenactors pack up their gear and load it into minivans in the parking lot. The twins were hot and thirsty, and Dr. McDonald gave them a few dollars to buy cold drinks at a little snack truck. Coke and Pep got in line behind 2 people dressed as Union soldiers. "What can I get you?" asked the lady in the truck. "I'll have a Coke," said Coke. "I'd like a Pepsi," said Pep. They paid for their drinks and moved off to the side. But no sooner had they taken their first sips when 2 hands clapped over their faces. "Keep your mouth shut," a gruff voice muttered. "But we didn't." "Shut up!" Coke felt a pillowcase being pulled down over his head. His arms were pinned to his sides. He struggled to free himself, but there was nothing he could do. He felt himself being dragged into the woods. "We're gonna die," Pep tried to yell. "I knew it! We're gonna die!" And that is where we stop for today. And Coke still didn't get put into a giant shredder. So I don't know. I think he's lying to us. I don't think that's actually going to happen. Come back tomorrow and we will pick up with chapter 7 and find out what happens to Coke and Pep. Find out who drug them into the woods at the Civil War battlefield. That's not cool. Hopefully they can escape. All right. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Thanks.